In the heart of Los Angeles, where palm trees swayed gently against a backdrop of towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, there was a high school that buzzed with energy. It wasn't just any ordinary school. It had its own rhythm, its own rules, and its own hierarchy. On this particular Monday morning, something new arrived to disrupt the usual flow. Mia Carter. Mia stepped out of her grandmother's old sedan, clutching her backpack tightly as if it were a lifeline. She looked around nervously at the sea of students streaming into the building. The campus was huge, 3 stories tall with wide hallways and shiny floors that reflected the sunlight pouring in through large windows. For someone like Mia, who had spent most of her life moving from one small town to another, this place felt overwhelming. But she reminded herself why they had moved here, to start fresh after everything their family had been through. Her dark hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, framing her face perfectly. Her olive-toned skin glowed softly under the California sun, and her deep brown eyes held a quiet intensity. People noticed her immediately, not because she tried to stand out, but because she didn't blend in either. There was something about her presence, an air of mystery that made heads turn. Some whispered that she looked familiar, like she belonged on a movie poster or magazine cover. Others shrugged it off, assuming she was just another teenager trying too hard. But Mia wasn't trying at all. In fact, she preferred to stay invisible. She kept her head down as she walked toward the main office, avoiding eye contact with anyone who passed by. Her clothes were simple, a plain black hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, but even those seemed to draw attention somehow. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, with a quiet confidence that didn't match her reserved demeanor. Or maybe it was the fact that she didn't carry a phone or scroll endlessly through social media like everyone else did. Whatever it was, Mia stuck out like a sore thumb. Inside the office, the secretary handed her a schedule and a map of the school. "Welcome to Lincoln High," the woman said with a polite smile. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Mia nodded gratefully but doubted she'd take her up on the offer. Asking for help wasn't something she did often. Instead, she tucked the papers into her backpack and set off to find her first class. As she navigated the crowded hallways, she could feel eyes on her. Whispers followed her wherever she went. "Who's that? Is she new? She looks kind of different." Different was the word they settled on, though no one could quite explain what they meant by it. Different from what? From them? From normal? Mia ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on finding room 214 for her English class. When she finally slipped into the classroom seconds before the bell rang, all eyes turned to her once again. The teacher, Mr. Alvarez, greeted her warmly. "Class, this is Mia Carter. She's joining us from out of state, so please make her feel welcome." A few students mumbled hellos, but most just stared blankly. Mia took the only empty seat near the back, next to a boy wearing headphones who barely acknowledged her existence. Throughout the day, Mia did her best to fade into the background. She answered questions when called upon, took notes diligently, and avoided drawing any unnecessary attention to herself. By lunchtime, however, she realized that blending in wasn't going to be as easy as she hoped. As she stood in line at the cafeteria, holding a tray with a sandwich and a bottle of water, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with Chloe Bennett, the undisputed queen of Lincoln High. Chloe was everything Mia wasn't: bold, glamorous, and effortlessly popular. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back in perfect waves, and her designer outfit screamed wealth and confidence. Surrounding her were her loyal followers, a group of girls who laughed at every word she said and hung on to her every move. "Hey," Chloe said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You're the new girl, right?" "I'm Chloe." Before Mia could respond, Chloe continued, "We don't usually get transfers this late in the year. Where are you from?" Mia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Just a small town," she replied simply. Chloe raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Small towns are boring. You'll love it here. We have way more fun." She gestured vaguely toward her friends, who giggled on cue. "Anyway, sit with us today. We can show you how things work around here." It wasn't really an invitation, it was a command. Everyone knew that refusing Chloe meant risking social exile, but Mia didn't care about fitting into their world. "Thanks," she said politely, "but I think I'll sit somewhere else." For a moment, Chloe looked taken aback. No one ever turned her down. Then her lips curled into a smirk. "Suit yourself," she said, shrugging. "But don't say, 'We didn't warn you.'" With that, she strutted away, leaving Mia standing alone in the middle of the cafeteria. Mia found a quiet corner table and sat down, pulling out a book to read while she ate. She tried to tune out the noise around her, losing herself in the story. But even as she flipped pages, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Glancing up briefly, she caught Chloe staring at her from across the room, whispering something to her friends. They erupted into laughter, pointing in Mia's direction. Though she didn't let it show, Mia felt a pang of unease. She had dealt with bullies before in other schools, but something about Chloe felt different, more calculated, more dangerous. Still, Mia refused to let fear take hold. She reminded herself of the lessons her grandmother had taught her. Stay strong, stay calm, and never let anyone see you sweat. Little did Mia know, this encounter was only the beginning. Chloe's interest in her wasn't going to fade anytime soon, and unbeknownst to both of them, the secrets hidden within Mia's past were about to come crashing into her present in ways neither of them could anticipate. The next day at Lincoln High started much like the first. Mia woke up early, ate a quick breakfast with her grandmother, and headed to school without saying much. She knew the routine by now. Keep your head down, avoid unnecessary attention, and focus on getting through each day as smoothly as possible. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was brewing. Chloe's icy glare from the cafeteria the previous afternoon had left an impression, and Mia suspected it wasn't just idle curiosity driving the queen bee's interest. As she walked into the school building, the usual chaos greeted her. Students chatting loudly, lockers slamming shut, and teachers trying to restore order in the crowded hallways. Mia kept her pace steady, weaving through the crowd with practiced ease. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor as she made her way to her locker. It was tucked away in a quieter corner of the second floor, far enough from the main throng of students that she could grab her books without too many interruptions. But even before she reached her locker, Mia noticed something off. A group of girls stood nearby, whispering and giggling while stealing glances in her direction. One of them nudged another and pointed at Mia, causing the whole group to erupt into laughter. Mia recognized a few faces from Chloe's clique. They weren't exactly subtle about their intentions. She sighed inwardly but didn't let it show on her face. Instead, she opened her locker, exchanged the books she needed for her morning classes, and closed it again with a soft click. As she turned to leave, one of the girls stepped forward, blocking her path. It was Jenna, one of Chloe's closest friends, a tall, athletic girl with a sharp tongue and an even sharper glare. "Hey, new girl," Jenna said, smirking. "You're not very friendly, are you?" Her tone was teasing, almost playful, but there was a bite behind her words that made Mia's stomach tighten slightly. Mia paused, meeting Jenna's gaze calmly. "I'm just here to learn," she replied evenly. "Nothing personal." Jenna tilted her head, pretending to consider this. That's funny because Chloe says you've got some kind of attitude problem. Is that true?" Mia blinked, unimpressed. "If having an attitude means keeping to myself, then sure. Guilty." This response earned a ripple of laughter from the group, though not the kind they were expecting. Some of the girls looked unsure, exchanging uncertain glances. Mia's calm demeanor seemed to throw them off balance. They were used to people, either cowering under their judgment or lashing out defensively. Neither reaction gave them the satisfaction they craved. But Mia, she was different. And that difference intrigued and irritated them. "You think you're better than us or something?" Jenna pressed, stepping closer. Her voice carried a hint of frustration now, as if Mia's lack of fear was somehow disrespectful. "No," Mia said simply, shifting her backpack onto her shoulder. "I don't think about you at all." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. The girls stared at her, unsure how to respond. Then, one of them muttered, "Wow, okay, under her breath breaking the tension. Jenna scowled but stepped aside, allowing Mia to pass. As Mia walked away, she heard them muttering behind her back, calling her names and speculating about why she acted so strangely. By lunchtime, the whispers had spread like wildfire. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about Mia. Some thought she was stuck up. Others believed she was hiding something big. Chloe herself hadn't shown up to confront Mia directly yet, but her influence loomed large over the situation. Wherever Mia went, eyes followed her, and conversations hushed when she approached. It was exhausting, but Mia refused to let it get to her. She reminded herself that these people didn't matter. Their opinions didn't define her. When the lunch bell finally rang, Mia grabbed her tray and headed straight for her usual spot in the corner of the cafeteria. She preferred solitude anyway. It gave her time to think, to breathe, and to recharge after hours of pretending everything was fine. Today, however, peace wasn't on the menu. As soon as she sat down, Chloe appeared seemingly out of nowhere, flanked by her loyal entourage. Her blonde hair shimmered under the fluorescent lights, and her perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically against the edge of her tray. There was a predatory gleam in her eyes as she stopped directly in front of Mia's table. "Well, well," Chloe drawled, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence again. How's your first week going, Mia?" Mia glanced up briefly, then returned her attention to her sandwich. "Fine," she said flatly, taking another bite. Chloe pursed her lips, clearly annoyed by Mia's indifference. "You know, most people would jump at the chance to sit with me. I'm giving you an opportunity here. Why are you being so rude?" "I'm not being rude," Mia replied coolly. "I'm just not interested." The cafeteria grew quieter as more students noticed the standoff. Even those who hadn't been paying attention earlier were now watching intently, eager to see how this would play out. Chloe's cheeks flushed pink, not from embarrassment but from anger. No one rejected her. "Ever." "Not interested?" Chloe repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Do you even realize who I am? You can't just brush me off like that." Mia finally looked up, meeting Chloe's gaze head-on. "I know exactly who you are," she said quietly, "and I still don't care." For a split second, Chloe looked genuinely shocked. Then, her expression hardened, and a cruel smile spread across her face. "Oh, you're playing tough, huh? Let's see how tough you really are." Without warning, she reached out and swung her hand toward Mia's cheek, intending to deliver a sharp, humiliating slap. But Mia was faster. In a blur of motion, Mia caught Chloe's wrist mid-air, stopping the slap before it could land. The entire cafeteria gasped audibly. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Chloe stood there, wide-eyed and stunned, her arm firmly held in Mia's grip. The other students gawked in disbelief, unsure whether to cheer, laugh, or run for cover. Mia didn't say a word. She simply held Chloe's gaze, her own expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, she released Chloe's wrist and leaned back in her seat, resuming her meal as if nothing had happened. Chloe stumbled backward, clutching her hand as if it had been burned. Her face turned bright red and she stammered, What? How did you?" Mia shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before picking fights." With that, she stood up, grabbed her tray, and walked out of the cafeteria, leaving behind a room full of gaping mouths and a humiliated Chloe Bennett. The cafeteria erupted into chaos the moment Mia walked out, her tray in hand and her head held high. Students whispered feverishly, their voices overlapping as they tried to piece together what had just happened. Some were stunned by Mia's quick reflexes. Others couldn't believe Chloe had been so thoroughly humiliated. For a few seconds, even Chloe herself seemed frozen in place, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Her friends hovered around her, unsure whether to comfort her or join in the gossip. "Did you see that?" one student exclaimed to another at a nearby table. "She stopped Chloe's slap like it was nothing. She's got to be some kind of ninja," another chimed in, wide-eyed. "How does someone move that fast?" Rumors began swirling almost immediately. Some claimed Mia was secretly trained in martial arts, while others speculated she might have a hidden past as a stunt double, or even a spy. A few conspiracy theorists suggested she was part of a secret government program designed to create superhumans. Of course, none of these theories were true, but the more outrageous they got, the faster they spread. By the end of lunch, the school believed Mia Carter was either a superhero or an international assassin. Meanwhile, Mia had retreated to the library, seeking refuge from the madness. She sat alone at a quiet corner table, flipping through a book without really reading it. Her mind raced as she replayed the incident in her head. She hadn't meant to cause such a scene. She'd simply acted on instinct. Years of training, with her grandmother, had drilled certain responses into her muscle memory, and catching Chloe's wrist had been automatic. But now, everyone would be watching her even more closely than before. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Mia packed up her things and headed to her next class. The hallways were alive with chatter about the slap incident, and she could feel eyes following her wherever she went. Some students gave her admiring looks while others glared at her suspiciously. A group of boys near the water fountain wolf whistled when she passed, calling her the girl who took down Chloe. Mia ignored them all, keeping her focus on navigating the crowded halls. By the time she reached her biology classroom, word had reached every corner of the school. Even the teachers seemed aware of the drama unfolding among their students. Mr. Alvarez, the English teacher from earlier that week, greeted her warmly as she entered his room for 6th period. "Heard you've been making quite the impression, Miss Carter," he said with a knowing smile. "Care to share your secret?" Mia shook her head, offering him a polite but firm no. "No secrets, sir, just lucky timing." Mr. Alvarez chuckled, clearly unconvinced, but he didn't press further. Instead, he launched into the day's lesson, leaving Mia to her thoughts once again. As much as she wanted to fade into the background, she knew that wouldn't happen anytime soon. People were fascinated by her now, and fascination often led to curiosity, and curiosity could lead to trouble. After school, Mia lingered in the parking lot, waiting for her grandmother to pick her up. She leaned against a lamppost, scrolling absently through her phone to avoid making eye contact with anyone. Unfortunately, avoiding attention wasn't going to be easy today. Chloe and her crew were lingering nearby, whispering furiously and casting furtive glances in Mia's direction. It was only a matter of time before they decided to confront her again. Sure enough, Chloe eventually broke away from her group and marched straight toward Mia. Her expression was a mix of fury and determination, and her hands were balled into fists at her sides. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she snapped, stopping a few feet away. "Embarrassing me in front of everyone like that." Mia looked up from her phone, meeting Chloe's glare calmly. "I didn't embarrass you. You embarrassed yourself." Chloe's jaw tightened, and for a moment it looked like she might lunge at Mia. But instead she forced a humorless laugh. "Oh, you're good. Real smooth. But let me tell you something. You don't know who you're messing with. I run this school. And if you think I'm gonna let you walk around acting all untouchable, you're dead wrong." Mia raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Are you done?" Chloe faltered, thrown off by Mia's lack of fear. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming back to her friends, who eagerly surrounded her to hear the latest update. Mia sighed, shaking her head as she watched them go. She knew Chloe wasn't bluffing. This was far from over. If anything, the confrontation had only fueled Chloe's obsession with taking her down. And Mia couldn't afford to let her guard down, not when she was already standing out so much. When her grandmother finally arrived, pulling up in their old sedan, Mia slid into the passenger seat with relief. Maria glanced at her granddaughter, noticing the tension in her shoulders. "Long day?" she asked gently. "You could say that," Mia replied, leaning her head against the window. "People here are complicated." Maria nodded knowingly. "High school can be tough, mija. But remember, you're stronger than you think. Your abuelo taught us both how to handle ourselves, and that strength runs deep in your veins." Mia smiled faintly, touched by her grandmother's words. Vin Diesel may have been gone, but his legacy lived on in ways Mia was only beginning to understand. His discipline, resilience, and quiet confidence had shaped her upbringing, even if she hadn't realized it until now. That night, as Mia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she thought about everything that had happened. She knew hiding her skills wasn't sustainable, not when people were already suspicious. Maybe it was time to embrace who she was, rather than trying to shrink herself to fit into someone else's mold. After all, she wasn't just any ordinary teenager. She was Mia Carter, granddaughter of a legend, and she carried his spirit with her every step of the way. But embracing her identity came with risks. Would revealing too much make her a target, or would it earn her respect? Either way, Mia understood one thing clearly. Life at Lincoln High was about to get a whole lot more complicated. That evening, Mia sat at the kitchen table with her grandmother, Maria. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room. Maria stirred a pot of soup on the stove, occasionally glancing over her shoulder at Mia, who was picking at a bowl of rice with little appetite. Maria had noticed something was off the moment Mia walked through the door earlier. Her granddaughter's shoulders were tense, her movements deliberate but guarded as if she were carrying an invisible weight. It wasn't hard to guess what, or rather who, was behind it. "Mija," Maria finally said, turning off the stove and sitting down across from Mia. "What happened today?" Mia hesitated, twirling her fork absently. She didn't want to burden her grandmother with details about high school drama, especially since Maria already worked so hard just to keep them afloat. But there was no point in hiding it either. Maria had always been able to read her like an open book. "It's nothing serious," Mia began cautiously. "Just people trying to make trouble." Maria raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Trouble? What kind of trouble?" Sighing, Mia recounted the events of the day, the whispers, the stares, Chloe's attempted slap, and the cafeteria spectacle that followed. As she spoke, Maria listened intently, her expression shifting between concern and pride. When Mia finished, she leaned back in her chair, bracing herself for whatever advice or lecture might come next. Instead, Maria smiled softly. "You handled it well, Mija. Better than I could have hoped for." Mia blinked, surprised by the compliment. "I didn't mean to cause a scene. I just reacted." "And that reaction saved you from being bullied further," Maria replied firmly. "But I think it's time we talked about why you reacted the way you did, and why people are starting to ask questions." Mia frowned, unsure where this conversation was heading. "What do you mean?" Maria stood up and crossed the room to retrieve a small photo album from the shelf above the sink. Returning to the table, she opened it carefully, revealing faded pictures of a younger version of herself standing beside a man who looked strikingly familiar. His bald head gleamed under bright studio lights, his muscular frame accentuated by a sleeveless shirt. Even without the signature goatee, there was no mistaking him. Vin Diesel. "This is your abuelo," Maria said, pointing to the picture. "He may not have been around much when you were growing up, but he left us with more than memories. He gave us strength, resilience, and skills that run in our bloodline." Mia stared at the photo, her heart pounding. She had seen pictures of her grandfather before, of course, but they had always felt distant, almost mythical. Growing up, she'd heard stories about how he rose from humble beginnings to become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. She knew he was tough, disciplined, and fiercely protective of his family. But hearing those stories was different from realizing she carried pieces of him inside her. "Abuela," Mia said slowly, looking up at Maria. "Are you saying I'm like him because of training?" Maria nodded. "Yes, but not just any training. Your abuelo believed in preparation, not just for fame, but for life. He wanted everyone in the family to be ready for anything. So, after he passed, I made sure you learned what he taught me. Remember all those mornings we spent practicing self-defense? All those hours learning how to control your body and mind?" Mia nodded, though her memories of those lessons were hazy. They had started when she was young, disguised as playful exercises between grandmother and granddaughter. Over time, they evolved into something more structured, drills designed to build reflexes, balance, and awareness. At the time, Mia had assumed it was just part of staying active. Now she realized it was far more intentional. "You've always had potential, mija," Maria continued. "Your abuelo saw it too, even when you were little. He used to say you had fire in your soul. And now, whether you realize it or not, you're using what he gave you to protect yourself." Mia swallowed hard, processing everything her grandmother was telling her. For years, she had thought of those lessons as routine, something she did out of habit rather than necessity. But now, faced with the reality of her situation at school, she understood their true purpose. Those skills weren't just hobbies. They were tools meant to help her navigate a world that often underestimated her. "So," Mia asked quietly, "does this mean I should tell people about him?" Maria shook her head. "Not unless you're ready. Being related to someone famous comes with its own challenges, and I don't want you to feel pressured to live up to anyone's expectations. But if keeping it hidden puts you in danger, or makes others suspicious, you might need to share a piece of the truth." Mia nodded thoughtfully. Sharing her connection to Vin Diesel felt like opening Pandora's box. On one hand, it could explain why she moved with such precision and confidence. On the other, it could attract unwanted attention, turning her into a spectacle instead of a person. She needed to weigh her options carefully. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Mia replayed her grandmother's words in her mind. The idea of embracing her heritage both excited and terrified her. Would people see her differently if they knew? Would they respect her? Or would they treat her like some kind of novelty act? Her thoughts drifted back to Chloe and the rest of the bullies. If she revealed her secret, would it stop them from targeting her? Or would it only fuel their obsession? One thing was certain. Staying silent wasn't going to work forever. People were already speculating, and rumors spread faster than wildfire. In a place like Lincoln High, as sleep finally claimed her, Mia resolved to take things one step at a time. She wouldn't rush into anything reckless, but neither would she shy away from the truth entirely. Whether she liked it or not, her past was intertwined with her present. And maybe, just maybe, it could shape her future in ways she hadn't imagined. The next morning, Mia woke up feeling lighter somehow, as though a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Knowing where her strength came from gave her clarity and purpose. As she got dressed for school, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, steady and resolute. For the first time in days, she felt prepared, not just for whatever challenges awaited her at Lincoln High, but for the journey ahead. And deep down, she knew her abuelo would have been proud. The following days at Lincoln High were anything but ordinary. Mia could feel the tension in the air like a storm brewing on the horizon. Chloe and her clique had doubled down on their efforts to make her life miserable, determined to reclaim the dominance they felt slipping through their fingers. Whispers followed Mia wherever she went, and while some students admired her for standing up to Chloe, others seemed wary, as if she were a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Chloe, meanwhile, was seething. The slap incident hadn't just embarrassed her. It had exposed a vulnerability she couldn't afford to show in front of her peers. To lose face in such a public way was unacceptable, and she wasn't about to let Mia get away with it. Every glance, every smirk, every whispered conversation between classmates only fueled her anger further. She began plotting her next move, something that would put Mia firmly in her place once and for all. By Friday afternoon, Chloe's plan came together. After school, as students poured out of the building and into the parking lot, Chloe gathered her crew near the back entrance. "She thinks she's untouchable," Chloe muttered under her breath, pacing back and forth like a predator stalking its prey. "But we'll see how tough she really is when she's outnumbered." Her friends nodded eagerly, feeding off her energy. They had spent the entire week spreading nasty rumors about Mia, claiming she was hiding secrets, that she thought she was better than everyone else, or worse, that she was dangerous. Some even suggested she might be involved in illegal activities. By now, most of the school believed at least part of the gossip, and those who didn't know what to believe were too afraid to speak up. Mia, oblivious to the brewing storm, lingered inside the library until the crowd thinned out. She enjoyed the quiet solitude of the space, using the time to finish an assignment before heading home. When she finally stepped outside, the parking lot was nearly empty save for a few stragglers. As she made her way toward the corner where her grandmother usually waited, she noticed a group of figures blocking her path. It was Chloe and her posse. Their expressions ranged from smug to menacing, and they spread out in a loose semicircle, cutting off any easy escape routes. For a moment, Mia froze, her heart pounding in her chest. But then she steadied herself, remembering her grandmother's words. Stay calm. Trust your instincts. Well, well, Chloe sneered, stepping forward. Looks like you're all alone this time. No teachers around to save you. Mia scanned the area quickly, assessing the situation. There were 6 of them, including Chloe, and they were clearly intent on causing trouble. Her mind raced, calculating possible outcomes. Fighting back wasn't ideal. Not because she doubted her abilities, but because it would only escalate things further. Still, she knew she couldn't simply walk away without addressing the situation. What do you want, Chloe? Mia asked, evenly, keeping her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Chloe laughed, though it lacked humor. What do I want? You humiliated me in front of the whole school. Do you think I'm going to let that slide? I didn't humiliate you, Mia replied coolly. You did that yourself. All I did was stop you from slapping me. Chloe's eyes narrowed and she took another step closer. Oh, so now you're brave. Let's see how brave you are when it's not just me. Before Mia could respond, one of Chloe's friends lunged at her, aiming for her arm. Reflexively, Mia sidestepped, grabbing the girl's wrist and twisting it gently but firmly enough to send her stumbling backward. The rest of the group hesitated, momentarily stunned by Mia's speed and precision. Don't test me, Mia warned, her tone icy. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I won't let you push me around either. For a split second, there was silence. Then Chloe snapped, charging at Mia with surprising ferocity. Instinct kicked in, and Mia ducked beneath Chloe's flailing arms, using her momentum against her. With a swift motion, Mia swept Chloe's legs out from under her, sending her sprawling onto the pavement. The other girls gasped, torn between shock and fear. One of them shouted, "Get her!" and lunged again, this time aiming a clumsy punch. Mia dodged effortlessly, countering with a controlled strike to the girl's shoulder that left her clutching it in pain. Another tried to grab her from behind, but Mia spun around, catching the girl's arm and redirecting her force until she stumbled past her. The fight, or rather, the lack of one, continued like this for several minutes. Mia moved with fluid grace, anticipating each attack and neutralizing it without throwing a single punch. Her movements weren't aggressive. They were calculated, designed to incapacitate temporarily rather than cause harm. Within moments, Chloe's crew was scattered across the ground, groaning and nursing minor injuries. Chloe, still on the asphalt where she'd fallen, stared up at Mia in disbelief. What are you?" she stammered, her bravado completely shattered. Mia crouched down beside her, meeting her gaze squarely. "I'm just a girl trying to survive high school," she said quietly. "But here's the thing, Chloe. You don't know me. And maybe now you'll think twice before messing with someone different." With that, Mia stood up, brushed off her jeans, and walked away, leaving Chloe and her friends speechless. As she reached the edge of the parking lot, she spotted her grandmother's car pulling up. Maria rolled down the window, concern etched on her face. "Mija, are you okay?" she asked. Mia nodded, sliding into the passenger seat. "Yeah, abuela, I'm fine." Maria studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Did you have to use what I taught you?" "Only a little," Mia admitted with a faint smile. "But I think they got the message." As they drove home, Mia leaned, her head against the window, watching the world blur past. She felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. The confrontation was over, for now, but she knew the fallout would ripple through the school. Videos of the fight would likely end up online, and people would talk. A lot. And yet, for the first time, Mia wasn't afraid of what they might say. She had faced her fears head-on, relying on the skills her grandfather had passed down through her grandmother. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, not as the bullied new girl, but as someone strong, resilient, and unapologetically herself.